Hello, hello, my friends, my sisters, you beautiful women on the Tambourine Path. Sorry for my squeaky chair. I wanted to return to you. First of all, I miss you. I miss us. It was a wonderful process of 5 weeks together, and I hope you've been enjoying the replays. And I have so much more I want to share, so that's why I wanted to come to you today. And I hope that this second new moon in Aries season, this time associated with a solar eclipse at the very last degree of Aries, as we move into the beauty of Taurus season. I hope that this is a good time for you. It has a lot of planetary aspects, and I won't go into that. I'm not an astrologer. I just play one in my own life. And for some, it can feel quite powerful. And I hope that if it's true for you in that way, that it's a positive expansion and portal that you're moving through. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here to actually share with you more teachings of Layne's and mine as well as they relate to that. I think that you have come to figure out that the Tambourine Path is more than just about drumming, as I was inspired by Layne, as well as other teachers, that the drum as a powerful instrument for personal and planetary transformation, it's not just about the drum. There are so many other aspects, such as rhythm and vibration and the herstory, the collective, the ritual and ceremony, and the festivities, and the sacred space that we meet in. I think that the reason why Moonrise, Daughters of an Ancient Pulse, gosh, that's a photo of them right here, in procession. I know that's really far away. In procession on the beach, dressed in white. Maybe I should just go get that for you, but you've seen images of Moonrise in my videos. But I think that the reason for our success was because of the bonding that took place in our weekly sessions, the sharing, the opening circles, and the space that I created and co-created with them, which is why I wanted to share a lot of my tools for bringing us together. I don't know why I did that funny dance when I said tools, but I was trying to come up with the word. When we join together to create that sacred space, to create our safe circle, and to find a way to connect, especially in the virtual realm, but even if we're together in person, to find those threads that connect us can really create a bond that infuses the entire experience of our drumming together, our rituals, the processions and the meaning behind the processions that we brought into the public. It was a shared experience, and I don't know that they would have had the confidence to move forward with bringing our processions into the public the way that we did, as they were all beginners when they started with me, and none of them were advanced percussionists or musicians necessarily. There were a wide range of women in this large group, and the core membership thrived every week, traveling from far and wide with that level of commitment because of the bond that they felt. So this is how Layne taught. I don't know that I would say that she worked as much as I did on the bonding, although we always had opening and closing rituals with every weekend workshop. I don't know that I ever took a a shorter workshop with her than that. Some of them 3 days and some of them 2 days or a day and a half, whatever. But there was always some kind of opening circle and closing circle with ritual. And it was always with women until the advanced training that I took. And then we had one wonderful man, and she was co-teaching with Tommy at the time. But that's how I came up with the term women, rhythm, and ritual, because for me it was about being in a circle of women in rhythm and united in ritual in our sacred space. So that's where I've always been coming from, and that's pretty much how Layne worked as well. I wanted to review one of the readings of Layne's that I started with on the second class, and then continue and go off a little bit onto my teachings and show you one of the ancient images. So this is not about drumming today, so those of you who are here just for the drum, you can see them, and I hope that you're drumming and that you're enjoying, and you have drum lessons in the replays and more to come. I'll do another one here as I feel like I'm gradually bringing this current circle of us to a close. I don't feel closure yet, so I'll keep sharing until I do, and then hopefully at that point I'll know how to move forward with the next step with those of you who have expressed. And thank you. Thank you for those beautiful testimonials too. Some shared with me privately and some shared at the end of our last session. How transformational it was for many of you. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who do want to continue, I'm happy to do that, and I will be in touch. So, and for those of you who don't feel called, no hard feelings. I mean, this was hopefully a beautiful experience for you, and that you're able to take some of those threads with you into your future. So, anyway, drawing from some of Layne's writings today, and then going a little deeper and broader into weaving it with my teachings. So for her, this was the reason why the drum was at the core of the ancient Mediterranean spiritual rites, and I would say beyond the Mediterranean, but universally, perhaps, at least in my experience. So this first paragraph will be a repeat from what I've said before, but then it allows for a segue to go more deeply into these teachings. It's an ancient thought that rhythmic sound is at the root of all creation, that matter is structured by sound, and that life is rhythm. In India, the influence of rhythm and tuning on consciousness has been explored for thousands of years and is considered a form of yoga called Nada Yoga. I mentioned this before. And being that she was so practiced as a yogini, she wanted to bring that piece in. The primary concept of Nada Yoga is that ultimate reality emanates from a primordial first sound, the pulse or Big Bang that creates the universe. And this, I've talked before about the Bindu, that unstruck sound, that dot in the center of frame drums in some of the images that I've shared from Layne's collection. So this creates the universe. It emanates from it, from that compacted, unmanifested first sound. The frequencies of this root vibration create our physical world. As human beings, we are also emanations of this vibration. We are truly rhythmic beings, Layne would say. and subject to the laws of sound and the laws of rhythm in general, I would add. This archetypal pulse of consciousness vibrates within us as the sound of our own heart beating. And I would say to children, you have a drum inside your own body. What do you call that? And they would all say, the heart, our heart. And I'd say, if you didn't have one, you wouldn't be standing here or sitting here in front of me right now. Layne continues, sound is power, and the first sound we hear is the pulse of our mother's blood. No sound has a more powerful effect on our consciousness. No sound has a more powerful effect on our consciousness. We vibrate to this primordial pulse even before we have ears to hear. And Layne would say, all of our sense perceptions developed to the pulse of our mother's blood. And at some point, I want to make at least a voice memo on my phone, being that I have it on cassette tape, and it's really challenging to transfer cassette recordings onto CD. But I can play the cassette tape on my stereo and make a voice memo for you with my phone and play that for you in a video. I might even, if I have a chance, I might edit it into this video for you. So this is what we developed to for all the time that we were in our mother's womb. No matter your relationship to your personal mother, that doesn't matter. That's the vibrational sound, the pulse of her blood. And like I've said before, the range from the heart down to the womb is a pretty far distance. So we're not vibrating to her heartbeat, as some might say and some might think. We're actually rocking and rolling to the pulse of her blood for months and months, and everything about us is developing to that. And then, as Layne would say, we're born into this rhythmic world with the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars. And we live our lives to rhythm. And as Randy Crafton, another teacher of mine, would say, everything in this universe can be described and defined as rhythm. So we know that everything, in the universe, scientists can describe mathematically, and math and music have been associated and whatnot. I also have read that quantum physics, when diving as deeply as they can into the smallest of particle, whatever that measurement is now, the only thing that's there is emptiness, space, and vibration. So everything that we think of as matter, as having a surface, is vibration, and it's emptiness, and it's strictly our perception of it that tells us that it's solid or liquid or gaseous, or I don't know. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Whether or not you follow quantum physics or believe in it, it's one way of thinking. It's all part of the great mystery that human minds are always wanting to attach definition to. So if everything, we look at our solar system and the planetary bodies as they move through the heavens, and they all have their rhythmic cycles. We have a pulse, and those who have studied, I think it's craniosacral work, where they can develop the sensitivity in their hands to feel the rhythms of the spinal fluid. And one of the body workers who I used to work with, who was incredibly gifted, she had lots of gifts in her toolkit, she also informed me that all of our organs have their own rhythm, their own pulse, if you will, their own cycles of when they are optimized, when they rest, when they're active. And I think that we've learned this through Ayurvedic teachings as well. Certain cycles of the day and night are of organs in the body, parts of the body, meridians and how they flow. The cells in our body turn over, what is it again, every 7 years or whatever it is, I forget already, but we've known this for a long time. So we're like essentially renewed. And women were the first calendar keepers with their menstrual cycles and the cycles of the moon and how they related those two cycles together. So that's rhythm too, and so we may not be able to hear the pulse of the organs. Practitioners of Chinese medicine who read our pulses. Jeff and I once had an astounding practitioner who we would see on a regular basis up in Maine when we lived there. She could read our pulse, the pulse of the liver and the pulse of the spleen, and it was pretty remarkable. Not all of us have developed those skills, and yet, they can be felt even if they're not audible. I read in Discover magazine. We used to have a subscription, thanks to Jeff's dad sending us an annual subscription. We come from a scientific family on that side. That granite has a pulse that has been measured, and we may not be able to hear the actual pulse of granite, that stone that pretty much dominates parts of New England. It has a pulse. And in the 1960s, scientists were able to measure that the Earth herself has a pulse every 26 seconds. Remarkable. We may not be able to hear it. It may be inaudible. We may not be able to feel it, although perhaps on some level we connect to that because we are of the earth. Everything that we are comes from the earth. What you had for breakfast this morning is from the earth and is now your body. It's now the hands on your body, the ears on your head, the feet you walk on. So everything that we are comes from the earth, and everything that we are will return to her. And as Layne would say, she loves us so much, she never lets us go. It's what we call gravity. So the earth has a pulse too. So when we align the rhythms of our feet in our walking pulse, and we connect that to one another with our feet when we are together in circle, that's the foundation for our rhythm. I know that it was one of the questions about why do we step? Is it just for processions? And I could go on and on about entrainment. I already have. And it's just the most important thing when we are in circle with our drums, how we are able to stay together. How many drum circles have you been to where the drummers just weren't able to keep it together? There wasn't a pulse. And whether the pulse is in the feet or the pulse is someone playing a cowbell or a high-sounding drum or a low-sounding drum, there's some kind of pulse that everyone can align to, a bell pattern in complex traditional West African playing. It can be a complex bell pattern, but if each of the drummers, no matter what instrument they're playing, what rhythm they're playing, if they align their rhythm to that bell pattern, that's the pulse to them. And then we're all playing together. So with us, with frame drums, it's often the feet. And it feels so good. And you'll see that We all naturally do it. Any of us who studied with Layne, we naturally fall into stepping in time. When Layne gave a performance presentation at the very first, get the name of this. This is such a great name. Women's World Percussion Happening. Wait, oh crap. What was the full name of it? Women's World Drum and Percussion Happening. Oh my gosh. It was back in the late 90s, and I'm not even sure that I have the name correct. It was such a great name. It was a happening. And it was in the summer in the Catskills of New York somewhere at a Jewish camp. And we were there for a whole weekend. Women from around the country were there. And there were just two of us from Layne's intensive training. Barb Pitcher, may her soul rest in rhythmic peace, and I were both there. So this is outdoors, and it's a tent with chairs, and Layne is on a little stage platform. And she gets up there with, I can't remember what she was playing, frame drum or tambourine, and she starts stepping. And I decided I did not want to sit. I wanted to be standing off to the side because I wanted to get full view of her. I didn't want, I'm vertically challenged, so I didn't want to be sitting there in the audience, all these, chairs on ground level like this, trying to see her. I wanted full view. So I stood off to the side, and as soon as Layne began to step, I too began to step in rhythm with her. And then I looked over, and behind all of the women seated in chairs watching this performance that had just begun was Barb Pitcher, standing behind everyone, stepping with Layne. It's just something that we do naturally. We align ourselves to the pulse, and it just feels so good. And again, if you have whatever physical challenges that prohibit you to be stepping and in time with the pulse, then if you're seated, then you can sway. Just sway to the pulse. So, back to Layne's writing. And because Robin brought this up as a memory at the beginning of our last class, Robin said that in the workshop that she took with Layne long ago, Layne had everyone laying in a circle with their heads in the center, and she played a recording of the pulse of our mother's blood and led a guided meditation that took us back as the primordial egg into our mother's ovary, as our mother's ovary was developing in her mother's body, and that's our grandmother. And our grandmother's ovaries were developing in her body as a fetus when she was developing in her mother's body, and that's our great-grandmother. It's very powerful stuff, and that's what Layne used to do as part of her workshops, and made a cassette recording. That's the recording I'm referring to, where one side of it is just the recording inside the womb, and the other side of the cassette tape has the recording inside the womb with Layne doing a guided meditation. And I've led my own versions of that guided meditation as well. And I've used the information of the connecting to our lineage in this way. Again, no matter your relation to your own mother, choose who you feel is your motherly role model in this lifetime, and call her in. So, as Layne says, as we connect to the pulse of our mother's blood and back to the very first pulse, that primordial sound, back through the pulse of all mothers and all the grandmothers, through the beat of the blood that we all share. This is, again, I'm back to Layne. I've returned to Layne's reading. Through the beat of the blood that we all share, this sound can return us to the pre-conscious state, to the inner structure of the mind, to the power and the source of who and what we actually are, the pulsing field of all consciousness existing everywhere, within everything, beyond past, present, or future. Who and what she has learned since then, she says. Our bodies and consciousness took form to this sound. The powerful sound draws us back. This powerful sound draws us back to our earliest stirrings of awareness, and is why drumming has been used in shamanistic, religious, and transformative rites since Paleolithic times. The power of rhythmic sound returns to us. The power of rhythmic sound returns us to the pre-socialized, unconditioned, and balanced state of awareness we experienced in the womb. As Jimmy Two Feathers would say, he's from Earth Drone Council in Massachusetts. As he would say, the drum circle was the first church and the first nightclub. And I would tell all my students, no matter what the genre of class or drum circle that I was leading or teaching, you belong here. Whether or not you believe that, you belong to this circle. Here in general, yes, but also here to this circle. Whether or not you feel yourself to be a rhythmically challenged person or feel an affinity to rhythm, whatever called you to this drumming experience was a natural impulse. And that is the most natural impulse there is, impulse, inner pulse. And this is why humans have been drumming in ceremony and celebration for thousands and thousands of years, and sharing around the fires as they traveled by boat and on foot. They would meet up with others and share stories and rhythms and songs and musical instruments around the fire. And even in modern times, not many people know this, but that this is something that I learned from Valerie Naranjo, a master percussionist who was inducted into the Percussive Arts Society's Hall of Fame the same weekend that Layne Redmond was in 2021. She was the very first female drummer on Saturday Night Live, and she is a world percussionist, and she grew up on the Ute Reservation out west. Have I told this story to you all before? I'm having a deja vu. Well, anyway, she told us in a workshop while Jeff and I were studying the Gil, the West African balafon that she was a master teacher in, that she had studied from master teachers. So she was there for that purpose at Unity with a Beat, which was a drumming for wellness conference that used to take place annually. But she said that she had learned from her father and her uncle while she was visiting them on the reservation during I think it was Thanksgiving or Christmas holidays, that what we call the Native American hoop drum, that they call the bodhrán out there, they call it the bodhrán because they learned about it from the Irish who were immigrant workers building the railroad out west decades and decades ago. And this came up in a conversation between herself and her relatives because she was in the orchestra pit for river dance and the Lion King. That's how she met Randy Crafton, founder of Unity with a Beat, etc. And Randy is a master frame drummer and bowron player, and was in the orchestra pit for Riverdance, and or maybe in the maybe they were substitute percussionists. I don't remember if they were primary or substitutes, but anyway, that's how the Valerie and Randy met, and so he was learning about the bowron from Randy for the first time, and she was like, "Well, we have that drum, we call it a bowron too." So then the next time that she went out west and was reunited with her family during a holiday, and she brought up the question, that was the answer she got. So humans, you know, did you know the ukulele is not native to Hawaii? It was brought by the Portuguese sailors who sailed to Hawaii, and the Hawaiian king fell in love with it. In Portugal, they called it the cavaquinho, and the Portuguese sailors brought it to Hawaii, and the Hawaiian king said, "Oh my gosh, I love this. I'm making it the national instrument." And I mean, yeah, humans have been sharing for thousands and thousands of years. And the frame drum is the most universal instrument, and the pulse of our mother's blood, the most universal experience that every single human, mammal, gosh, not even mammals alone, the chicken is born twice. It's born as an egg, and then it's reborn when it cracks its way out of the egg. But when it was an egg, it was developing in its mother, and chickens have a pulse, don't they? Anyway, this aspect of Layne's work was huge in her world, in her life. And it was a huge part of her teaching, and informed her drumming, informed her drum instruction, and informed our learning to play the drum, and has informed, obviously, how I teach and what I teach. Okay, so moving on. This is a big teaching here. This is a big teaching, so thanks for staying with me, for those of you who dig this stuff as much as I do. Where do I want to go on to? So she says that rhythmic sound generated by a master drummer can captivate and move the conscious mind out of the way. And I would argue not just from a master drummer, but I have found that those of us who are learning to drum, no matter what our level, and I've seen it with my students too, that the conscious mind is often moved out of the way, and the resolutions that bubble up from intuition, inner voices, inner guidance, inner visions can all be tapped into. I've seen it. I felt it myself. I've seen it. I've received testimonies from beginner djembe students of mine, and just any one of us who can just drop into a meditative state when we're drumming, or when we're drumming in a circle. But I get what she's saying when it's in the hands of a master drummer. I do get that, and I mean no disrespect to what she's saying, because then she goes on to say, this enables the facilitator, the shaman, priest, or healer, I would add, or priestess, to deliver healing, integrating messages directly to deeper, less conscious realms of the mind that influence behavior. When participants in the process are also moving, chanting, breathing, and/or drumming, the therapeutic aspects of the experience are greatly magnified. And I found that when I was studying and teaching the Gabrielle Roth 5 Rhythms form of movement, and then when I was also training with Tony Bergens, founder of Journey Dance, which was powerful and profound, and, sorry, itchy nose, what Jeff called taking the 5 rhythms into Technicolor, because it was just so visually based. Layne continues, these practices synchronize not only mind and body, but the 2 hemispheres of the brain. In a state of hemispheric synchronization, the capacities of both the left and right hemispheres function at the same time. The mind becomes more concentrated, synthesizing information much more rapidly than normal. The conscious and unconscious levels of the mind communicate and integrate more easily. And Layne pointed out that there are very few human practices that actually do that for us, like, deep, deep meditative states, like the theta state that most of us fall asleep in if we get to that point. Emotions are easier to understand and transform in this state. Insight quickens and creative intuition flourishes, giving us the ability to visualize and manifest ideas quickly. Scientists believe that hemispheric synchronization may be the neurological basis of transcendent states of consciousness. Rhythmic breathing and movement allows alpha brain waves to predominate in the brain. Okay, so it's alpha, not theta, alpha waves to predominate. My bad, sorry. Causing muscle tension to be reduced and releasing endorphins, those feel-good chemicals, potent brain chemicals helping to cope with pain and are part of the mechanism for dealing with and eliminating fear and anxiety. As fear and anxiety are reduced, a higher state of awareness manifests. You know that pulse of the earth and sun that I led you on, was that the last class or the fourth class? And that was an abbreviated version of what Layne would do. She would, as she would take us into each one of the energy centers, the chakras of the body, and as we were breathing in and exhaling through that energy center, we were exhaling all fear, anxiety, worry, and she would name whatever negative emotions, and breathing in pure energy and light and trust and surrender. Getting back to Layne, the sound of the drum has represented this primordial pulse of creation since the beginning of human ritual. All drumming echoes this cosmic beat, along with the first sound we hear in the womb. Yeah, birth and death are the two greatest mysteries of the human mind. And probably, based on what I've learned from Layne, probably what related to the earliest forms of ritual. Even elephants revisit the bones of their dead loved ones. And very, very early humans have been found, the bones of early humans have been found in graves with artifacts and in a fetal position. So, and we're constantly in a state of transformation. Every day we wake up to a new day. It's the possibility of transformation. The sun is reborn every day. The new moon comes every 28 and a half days, 29 days, whatever the lunar cycle exactly is. These are all opportunities for a cleansing of death and rebirth. And women's menstrual cycles were probably viewed in that way as well. So Layne continues, this is the reason I believe that women in the ancient world were so identified with the frame drum. This is the reason symbols like the lotus flower, that represent creation, birth, or the womb, were often painted on the frame drum, or the reason why the drums were painted red, the color of blood, the color of life. And we also know, I would add, oftentimes painted green, the color of vegetative life. The frame drum, represented in the hands of the goddess or her priestess, illustrated her power to create the universe with one stroke of her drum, with one beat of her primordial heart. And everything vibrates into existence. So this is the image I wanted to bring in. And the frame is a bit fragile. It's usually hanging on my wall. Look at that. The light. Ah, 2 moons. So this was from, oh look, you get a reflection of my window and the greenery outside. Let me draw the blind so that you get less reflection. Hang on here, and I'll talk to you about Cybele in a way that might be a little less distracting. Oh, actually, well, that works. Okay, let's just, no, I'm going to draw it. Sorry, I'm so Piscean sometimes, and I vacillate. You should see me in an ice cream store trying to decide what flavor. Come on. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. It's hard to do from the side. From the front, I mean, not from the side. Sorry if that was loud. Well, there's still a bit of a reflection. Anyway, so this is one of Layne's slides, slide number 42, in fact, of Cybele, the great mother goddess, who beats the drum, the pulse of all life. And I've shown you images of her before because she was just, prolifically depicted in artifacts and in stone and clay, etc. And I even wrote here, because I printed this out, the pulse of all life. I love her. I love her face. Sorry, kind of feel like I look like her in this image in a way, especially when I was a girl. So anyway, she has her libation bowl, and she's seated on her throne, and she has a little lion cub. She's often depicted with a lion, or 2 of them flanking her. So here, this one is on her lap. And of course she has her frame drum and her crown on her head because she's the queen mother goddess. And I think I've mentioned before, and I'll mention again, the crown on her head was considered the fortress of protection. She was the great protectress. Like Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. Did you know that Jupiter astronomically protects the Earth's atmosphere? Jupiter has such a gravitational force that flying objects, once they've passed whatever's beyond, I think it's Saturn, beyond Jupiter, whatever is beyond Jupiter, once flying objects have passed that realm and comes into Jupiter's orbit, Jupiter has such a strong gravitational force that actually the planet draws it to itself. So really protects the Earth and the Earth's atmosphere. That's actually astronomically true, as I've been told by an astronomer. So anyway, or someone whose husband studies astronomy. Anyway, so the crown is the fortress. She's the great protectress, and we humans live within the walls of her crown, of that fort, and that her whole body is the earth herself, is the earth herself. And that's upon which we live and are connected to. So that's why I wanted to share this particular slide. And she beats her drum, the pulse of all life, that then vibrates everything into existence. And as Layne said, that's why she believes that women in the ancient world were so identified with the frame drum. It represents the primordial pulse that we all experience in the womb. So this is why Layne's work was often so transformational, because she saw it as a process of giving birth to ourselves. And I created a video on my YouTube channel reading one of her pieces called Viewing the Archaeology of My Ruins, which was really kind of deep and a little dark. But then again, she was going into the basements of museums that were dank and dusty, where all of these ancient artifacts of women frame drummers, priestess frame drummers, goddess frame drummers were just in storage, not even viewed, and just covered with dust and no eyes. You know, they weren't being carried in processions anymore. No eyes were looking at them, you know, with reverence. They were just in these dark basement storage areas, and Layne was starting to see the archetypes of these women, goddesses and priestesses, in their as you know, depicted in these artifacts. She was not only seeing the archetype that they represented in ancient times, but as an archetype for modern times. Defaced, not acknowledged, stored away, not revered, not in the light, and not connecting to other women as a source of empowerment, spiritual empowerment especially. So if you haven't yet, you can watch that video, and I share about an ancient site that Jeff and I had visited in New England, where I hope to be able to take a field trip during a retreat. Thanks to those of you who are asking for weekend gatherings and to deepen your experiences and possible retreats, etc. And sending me links to retreat centers, and yeah, it's been on my radar. It's been on our radar for a decade, actually. We thought we were going to do drumming and ukulele retreats over 10 years ago. And yeah, so wouldn't that be wonderful to be together, more of us in person, drumming together and experiencing what it is to go this deep with our drumming and our rituals and our sharing in person and with these teachings. It's just so rich, you know. But yeah, so I talked about this ancient site in New England that to me speaks so much to birth and death rituals, that we could just have such amazing ceremonies and processions and drum rituals there. So thank you for being with me during this added video time. I'll do at least a couple more, not quite as long. There's one that I want to talk to you about a little bit behind the scenes of where I was at spiritually when I started our group, for those of you who might be interested in that, and the seeds that planted that. It's just kind of personal to me, that I would just like to share with you, and obviously at least one more drumming video. I've got to come up with something to send you away with, for you to be practicing a little bit, so that, or playing with a little bit until we meet again. So until next time, I thank my teachers, my teachers' teachers, teachers before them, and so on. And the teachers who I mentioned in this particular pouring forth of a teaching. I mentioned Layne Redmond, Valerie Naranjo, Randy Crafton, Jimmy Two Feathers, all specifically. And thanks to Layne for that amazing, I don't know where that came from. I think that it might have been in an email from her that I just simply printed out into a document because I thought it was so great. My teachers, teachers, thanking my teachers before them, and so on. One drum, one heart. Thank you. Sending lots of love. Bye for now.